Tunde, the madman by day and the hidden ritualist by night. No one knew the truth behind his quiet smile.
Everyone thought the market was just another busy place where people hustled and went home. But something dark was hiding there in plain sight. In the middle of the noise and crowd sat a man people called Tunde, a dirty street wanderer with thick dreadlocks, a dusty face, and calm eyes that made people uncomfortable. Every day he sat near the roundabout, humming strange songs no one understood, holding tightly to a black nylon bag. Some people pitied him and dropped coins. Others avoided him completely, whispering that he was not an ordinary madman. He begged, he laughed to himself, he talked into the air, but no one ever saw him use the money he collected, and that alone made people uneasy. Still, life moved fast, and nobody cared as long as he caused no trouble. One night, everything changed when a woman who sold snacks started screaming that her little son was missing. The boy had gone to buy food nearby and never came back. People searched everywhere through the night, calling his name, but he was gone. The police came, asked questions, and left with no answers. Days passed, then months, and the story slowly faded, even though the mother never stopped crying. Then it happened again. Two small boys disappeared on their way to their mother's shop after being seen near the same roundabout where Tunde always sat. Once again, no one saw what happened, and the police found nothing. Fear started to grow, but people were too afraid to speak openly. Some began to whisper that the madman knew more than he showed. A few claimed they saw him carrying something heavy inside his black nylon bag at night, but no one had proof, and the police refused to act on rumors. Then one evening, for the first time in years, Tunde was nowhere to be found at his usual spot. People joked about it at first, thinking he had wandered off, but that same night, something strange happened. A black SUV quietly stopped near the roundabout. From a hidden corner, a woman watched as Tunde came out from the darkness, holding a heavy black nylon bag. He looked around carefully, entered the vehicle, and came out a few minutes later, empty-handed, before the car drove away in silence. The woman was terrified and told her husband, but he warned her to keep quiet if she valued her life. Soon, rumors spread quietly across the market, and people began to avoid that area, especially at night. Even the tough men who used to joke around stayed away. Still, no one spoke publicly, and the police never returned. Tunde came back the next day like nothing happened, sitting in his usual spot, smiling faintly and humming as if he knew something others didn't. A few nights later, a security guard saw the same SUV return. This time, he watched closely as Tunde handed over another black nylon bag to a man who stepped out of the car wearing a red cap and gloves. They said nothing, just nodded at each other before the man gave Tunde an envelope. As the car drove away, the guard noticed something that made his heart freeze, a dark liquid dripping slowly from the bag left behind on the ground. By the next morning, the security guard shared what he saw, and before noon, the whole market was already whispering that Tunde was trading human parts. Fear kept everyone quiet. Even when the police heard about it, they brushed it off as gossip. But something changed that day, and the air felt heavy with dread. At night, dogs gathered near the roundabout and cried, while cats began to disappear. Yet Tunde continued his routine like nothing was wrong. Sometimes he whispered to himself about money and flesh in a low, strange voice, and those who passed him late at night later said they heard faint crying coming from the black nylon bag beside him. Deep in the darkness, the same silent SUV returned again and again, waiting like it was part of something no one could explain. One evening, a man returning from a long trip stopped near the roundabout when his car suddenly broke down. Tired and frustrated, he stepped out to check the engine, not knowing he had walked into danger. Tunde sat quietly watching him from his usual spot, his eyes shining faintly in the dark. After a while, he stood up slowly and walked closer with the black nylon in his hand. The man greeted him politely, trying to stay calm, but Tunde did not answer. He only smiled in a cold, empty way that made the man uneasy. Then he muttered strange words under his breath, words that did not sound normal, and the air around them suddenly felt cold and still. By morning, the man's car was still there, with the door open and the key inside, but the man himself had vanished without a trace. When the police came, they saw signs of blood near the roundabout, but ignored it, saying it could be of an animal. No one argued because everyone already knew the truth, but was too afraid to speak. Days later, the SUV returned again, parking even closer this time. Two men stepped out, and Tunde came from the shadows, carrying another heavy black bag. He handed it over quietly, received something in return, and went back to his spot like nothing had happened. By morning, the rumors had grown stronger. Some said powerful people were behind it. Others believed Tunde was only pretending to be mad to hide what he was doing.
Still, no one dared to act.
Strange things began to happen after that. Every night, a faint cry echoed around the market, sounding like someone begging for help. But when people tried to find where it came from, they found nothing. The roundabout became a place everyone avoided after sunset, and children were warned never to go near it. Yet every morning, Tunde was still there, smiling softly and talking to himself like he was waiting for something. Not long after, a young woman returning home late got down near the same roundabout when there were no vehicles left. She looked around for help, but the street was empty and silent. Then, she saw Tunde sitting there with his bag. He turned slowly and smiled at her in a way that made her freeze. He spoke softly, calling her closer, but something about him felt wrong. She tried to ignore him, but he moved closer, and that night she disappeared like the others. The next day, her bag was found by the roadside, but she was gone, and fear spread everywhere. People stopped staying out late, shops closed early, and even the busiest parts of the market became quiet at night. Everyone knew something evil was happening, but no one was brave enough to face it. Some said they saw shadows moving in the dark, others claimed they heard voices crying for help, but each time anyone checked, there was nothing there. The fear grew so strong that the elders finally decided they had to meet and talk about what was happening, because whatever was hiding behind that roundabout was no longer something they could ignore. The elders gathered and spoke in low voices, their faces full of fear and worry. They said people were going missing too often and nothing was being done. But even as they talked, no real decision came out of it because fear had already taken over their hearts. While they argued, Tunde continued his strange life like nothing was happening. Every evening he sat at the roundabout, dirty and quiet, talking to himself in words nobody understood. Sometimes he drew strange signs on the ground, poured something into the soil and covered it again. Anyone who saw him felt uneasy, but no one dared to question him. One night, a man named Musa decided to watch him in secret. He hid behind a container and saw the black SUV return. Two men stepped out and treated Tunde with respect like he was important. They gave him something and he pointed toward a dark bush nearby, as if giving directions. Musa's heart started beating fast because he knew he had seen something dangerous. The next morning, Musa disappeared. His tools were left behind, but he was gone without a trace. That was when fear spread again, stronger than before. People believed Tunde had found out he was being watched. The community leader begged the police to act, but when they came to check, Tunde had vanished. His mat, his bag, everything was gone like he never existed. For 2 weeks, the market felt peaceful again. People slowly returned to their normal lives, laughing and working, but deep inside, everyone knew something was not right. They were just waiting for it to come back. Then one evening, a young boy was sent to buy something near the roundabout. The place was quiet and almost empty. As he walked closer, he saw a man sitting in the exact spot Tunde used to stay. At first, he was confused. Then, the man turned and smiled. It was Tunde. He looked worse than before, darker, thinner, and more frightening. He called the boy closer, offering him sweets, and before the boy could run, Tunde used something on him and he collapsed. That night, strange sounds were heard around the area, but no one came out to check. By morning, the boy was missing. Only his small slippers were found near the road. His mother cried loudly, and the whole community felt the pain. This time, fear turned into anger. People were tired of losing their loved ones while doing nothing. That evening, a group of men gathered and decided they would no longer wait for the police. They planned to watch the roundabout themselves. Later that night, they hid in the darkness, holding sticks and lanterns, waiting quietly. Around 11 p.m., the black SUV appeared again. They watched as Tunde came out from the shadows, dragging a heavy sack. He handed it over to the driver, and as they watched closely, the sack moved slightly. One of the men whispered that something inside was still alive. That moment of shock exposed them when one man made a noise by mistake. The driver reacted immediately and everything turned into chaos. The SUV sped off and Tunde ran into the darkness. The men chased him through the streets, their hearts pounding, but he moved faster than they expected, like he was not normal. After a long chase, they finally cornered him near an abandoned building. He stood there breathing hard, speaking strange words and warning them that they did not understand what they were dealing with. Suddenly, a strong wind blew, and before they could grab him, he disappeared into the darkness. When they returned to the roundabout, the sack he dropped was still there. They opened it and found the missing boy inside, weak but still alive. He spoke softly and said Tunde takes people and sells them. Then he lost consciousness. The men rushed him to the hospital, shocked by what they had just discovered. By morning, the news spread everywhere. People gathered, desperate for answers, and when the boy finally woke up, everyone waited in silence to hear what he would say.
The boy spoke with a weak voice and said, Tunde takes people, then the car comes and they give him something that smells like blood. His words made everyone freeze because the truth was finally coming out. A senior police officer took over the case and said they needed to find the car if they wanted to stop everything. The police began checking cameras and roads until they found blurry footage of the same black SUV moving through the city at night with no clear plate number. What shocked them most was where the car kept going, an old abandoned slaughter place that had been empty for many years. That same evening, police officers and local vigilantes went there to investigate. The place was dark, quiet, and filled with a terrible smell. As they walked inside with their lights, they saw old tables, rusty hooks, and stains that looked like dried blood. The deeper they went, the worse it became. They found black nylon bags hidden in corners, and inside them were human remains. Some of the men could not stand the sight. Then they discovered a small door that led underground. Inside that room, the walls were covered with strange symbols, drawings of eyes and skulls, and in the middle was an altar covered in dried blood. Behind it was a picture of Tunde dressed like a priest and a message written below it saying, "The work must never stop." At that moment, everything became clear. Tunde was not just a madman, he was leading something much bigger. He had been pretending all along to hide in plain sight. As they searched further, they found papers with many names listed. Some names were crossed out, and they realized those were the victims already gone. One of the men saw his own name on the list and froze in fear, knowing he was also a target. Then one of the officers shouted and pointed to a corner. The black SUV was there, covered in dust and stains, but the engine was still warm like it had just been used. That meant someone was still nearby. Suddenly, a strange voice echoed around them, telling them to leave. The air grew cold, and the place felt alive in a way that made everyone uneasy. They realized they were no longer just dealing with a criminal, but something deeper and more dangerous. Out of the darkness, Tunde appeared, no longer looking like a dirty wanderer, but wearing torn priest clothes with a different presence around him. One of the men shouted that it was over, but Tunde only laughed softly and said they did not understand what they were facing. The officer stepped forward and ordered him to surrender, but Tunde began to speak strange words. Immediately, the lights went out and the whole place fell into darkness. Panic spread as strange sounds filled the air, footsteps, whispers, and movement all around them. In the confusion, one of the men struck Tunde and he fell to the ground, bleeding but still smiling. Even in pain, he spoke calmly and said they could not stop what had already started. The officer demanded answers, but Tunde only smiled and told them to look behind. When they turned, they saw a broken mirror on the wall, and inside it were reflections of many people. Some looked normal, others looked powerful, all repeating the same word again and again. Before they could understand it, the mirror shattered loudly. When they looked back, Tunde was weak on the ground. This time they captured him and took him away. By morning, the whole city had heard the news that the man everyone thought was mad had finally been arrested. But deep inside, many people knew that the story was not truly over yet. The news spread everywhere that the madman butcher had finally been caught and his terror had ended. But for the people of Ojaoba, the fear did not disappear so easily. As the police dug deeper into his hideout, they discovered more shocking details, including lists of names, hidden money trails, and pictures that linked powerful people in society to the same dark acts. Businessmen, politicians, and even a respected church leader were arrested one after another as the truth slowly came out. In the end, Tunde was taken to court, found guilty of everything, and sentenced to death. The city finally felt like it could breathe again, and people began to return to their normal lives. The boy who survived his attack recovered after weeks in the hospital, and his story was shared across the country, giving courage to others who suffered in silence. His survival became a symbol of hope and truth. Later, a small memorial was placed near the roundabout where everything began. It was not built to honor anyone, but to remind people of what had happened there. It carried a warning that evil can hide in plain sight, and not everything is what it looks like. Life slowly moved on, and the market became busy again, but the memory of what happened never fully left the people. Even now, some say that when the night is quiet and the wind passes through the roundabout, you can still hear faint sounds of coins dropping and a soft, distant laughter carried in the air, a reminder that some darkness may leave the eyes of men, but its story never truly disappears.